Thanks for coming. This is the Henry and Jeff Show. Again, my name is Henry Mason. I'm with Precious Healthcare. We do home care and hospice in Atlanta, Chicago, and Crown Point, Indiana.
And I'm Jeff Nelson, the co-founder and chief operating officer of Blavity Inc. and Afrotech. We do all the Blavitying and all the Afroteching all over the world. I just have to throw it in there. So this is an interesting conversation we're going to have today.
Okay.
Because one of the things that you and I often know when we see each other is that it feels like we're just always working. Like we've been talking about taking a trip, like just going on vacation, kicking it somewhere for like years, and it's never happened because we can never take time off from work, right? And so I'm curious for you, like what are some of the most difficult things that you've had to work through? Because as an entrepreneur, it's like the show keeps on going, right? So tell me your experience with that.
So 2022 has been by far the craziest year of my life. My dad died in January. My youngest cousin, who probably I was very close to, she died 2 days after. And then my mom died about a month ago. And I think like having to go to work through that was probably the most difficult thing I've ever had to do, to the point where my mom passed. I'm doing all these things for the funeral. Her funeral is on Friday at 11 or 12. And I forgot I had a document I had to send in to the state that morning. So 8 o'clock.
The morning of the funeral?
The morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm at the office.
Wow.
Filling out this paperwork, sending it in. And I work in hospice, right?
Right.
Mother passed, so the dynamic, right? So I'm sending in this documentation. I have to leave there and drive to the funeral.
So in the backdrop of this, you had just had a newborn, right? So in the backdrop of all this, you got a newborn baby.
Yeah, yep. So and my mom got to spend 2 weeks with.
Thank God for that, man.
And it's interesting because I often now think about if it were not for my newborn babe, my son, like where would I be emotionally? Because that's just so much loss at one time that like having something new and fresh and something to look forward to was really what I needed. And so like God kind of works those ways, right? Yeah.
There's this Nas lyric that always sticks with me because I have a similar experience. And it's not directly applicable, I'll say the lyric, but it's freedom of jail, clips inserted, a baby's being born, same time a man is murdered, the beginning and end. Now, obviously, this is not murder, right? But just this idea of life and death, beginning and end, you have the most beautiful thing that can happen to you, your son, your firstborn son, Henry Mason III, Trey, beautiful baby boy.
Thank you.
Is born. And 2 weeks later, probably the worst thing, because I know your mom was your rock. Everything too. You talked previously about working with her and how you get your work ethic from her. And your mom, I never got the chance to meet her, but I attended the service.
And I appreciate that.
First of all, like I don't think I've ever attended a funeral for someone who I didn't know personally and the reason I say that is because this was the first time that I attended a service and I was truly a spectator and I learned about your mom.
Right.
This is my first introduction to her and I was like, this is a phenomenal woman.
Wow.
I mean, you see it in you and the son that she blessed this earth with, but just to know her story and everything, like I was just so touched and so inspired, honestly.
You,
and for that to happen, right? And you mentioned like your dad passed away, your cousin passed away. You have a son, best thing ever. Then you're a rock. Your mom passes, but you literally. It's not just like the abstract of like, oh, I'm still working. I'm still like running a business. Like you were literally in the office the morning of the funeral.
And I don't suggest anyone do that, by the way, right? Like I think that is a crazy side of me, right? But being able to compartmentalize like what I have to do right now versus how I feel. Because I have a younger brother who just like it's like I have to have time off, Henry. Like and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, right? Like if you have to have that, I can't tell you how to feel. But for where I'm trying to go, like I can't take that time off. Because even when my mom was sick, like since November, it would be times I'd be at the house and she'd say, you should probably go to work. Like there's stuff that you could be doing. Like no matter where you're sitting here with me or not, like what's going to happen is going to happen.
Yeah.
And if you haven't spent enough time with me by the time you're 34, you're not going to make up that time in 3 months.
Yeah.
So go do what you need to do. Come back, check on me, of course. But I think that it just kind of goes to show like how I was raised. Just very like, you have to go out there. You have to perform. You have to be the best you can and continue like this legacy that we built for you.
That work ethic.
And then, I mean, even now, man, like I wake up and I'm like, was me even not having a family like a selfish part of me, right? Because like now I'm 34 and I did to him what my dad did to me, right? You had these kids and I missed my dad's kids. Like I was born like a year after they both died. And so I did that to my son, not even knowingly, but then when it happened, I'm like, oh my God, this is what happened.
He won't remember his grandparents.
He'll never remember that side, right? Because he never met my dad and my mom. He won't know. But I do think about that. So just trying to manage those things. I'm not the only one who's done that. Right.
That's been my experience. I mean, I never met any of my grandparents, right? My dad's mom died the April of the year that I was born, right? And so I don't know what that experience is like of having grandparents, you know, and I am, you know, fortunate. I'm happy that your son does get his grandparents from his mom's side, but you know, but also understand what you're saying. Like your mom was so impactful to you that you wish that your son could experience
just a little bit,
and you know, she was able to experience him, but he's not gonna grow up having that memory. And I know that that's extremely tough.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but it goes back to when you're talking about building a business and what type of person that is, right? That's a strange individual. We don't want to call it that, but there's something to you that says, hey, I'm going to do this. It doesn't matter what happens to me. If it happens on Monday, I'm back at work on Tuesday. And like, I literally don't stop. I keep going. So I don't suggest anyone do what I did.
Yeah.
I think I even use that as a way to cover up the pain. Right. And so I don't suggest you do that. But if you must do that.
It's interesting that you say cover up the pain because I have a similar experience to you. And I decided to go full-time in entrepreneurship in 2015. And
you're a vet now, 7 years.
Whew, I can't do math like that. It's been a long time. I'll say that much. Right?
I got you.
But 2015, and that's when I decided to quit the full-time job I was working at the time. And so my daughter was born in 2015 prematurely. She was born at 29 weeks. Right. So it was very touch and go. So that was like the first tragic thing that I had to continue to work through. And like also at this point in time, I had just quit my job. So I'm like, insurance. And I always joke like, we could have a conversation about health insurance, but
it's insane.
It's insane. But I always joke like I was paying off my daughter for like 2 years. Just like my daughter was born, we were supposed to be out of town for a baby shower. She decided, was like, nah, baby shower mean that I'm coming today. So my wife has to go into emergency surgery. Our insurance coverage doesn't work out of state, right? So it's like, one, you're in the midst of this tragedy, trying to in real time get stuff pre-approved for insurance for them to do stuff that's medically necessary and claims and all that stuff. It's a mess. And also you're trying to run a business, right? So that was 2015. 2016, my sister was murdered. She was killed by a stray bullet the next year. 2017, my wife's grandmother passes. 2018, I have a situation that's similar to yours where now I've been operating as a full-time entrepreneur 3 going on 4 years. So the business has matured a little bit. 2018 is a time that I will never forget because my dad passed unexpectedly. And it wasn't something where he was battling a sickness that I knew about. I would call my parents and talk to them, maybe once a week, let them see my daughter, how she was getting big and everything. And my dad, who I always remembered as being like a beacon of strength, he just seemed kind of like lethargic and weak and sick. And he, I just thought he was a cold, right? Or he was just kind of out of it or tired. And get a call, he's in the hospital, doesn't know what's going on. My mom is panicking. I'm like, okay, I'm going to come into town. So I get a call on like Sunday night. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to come on Tuesday. And mind you, the tough thing about this is like, we're out of state. no family that lives here with us. Kids have to be in school. So I'm like, okay, I'll come there on Tuesday, buy the flight and everything. Get a call from my mom Monday morning saying my dad like completely lost it. Like they had to have a team of nurses and doctors to try to sedate him because he's trying to rip all the IV and everything off. And he's like, I'm ready to die. I'm ready to go. And she was like, freaked the fuck out. And for me to get a call like that, I'm like, oh, what is going on? So I like got a flight for that day. And I'm the type of person, like if I'm about to miss a bus or a train or a plane, I'm not going to run because I'm like, I don't want the like social embarrassment of like being seen running for something. But I ran to make this flight, barely made it as they were closing the door. Sitting on that plane, don't know what is going to happen.
What to expect.
Yeah. Flew into Chicago, get to the hospital, and, you know, my whole family's there. My dad's there. And again, like they still don't know what's going on. And I get there and I remember there was just like one time he woke up and I don't even know if he was like conscious. I don't know if it was just like he woke up, but our eyes made contact. I don't know if like he was present there, but that was the last time I saw his eyes open. And my mom had been sleeping in the hospital and things had sort of calmed down. And I remember I was like, hey, I will stay overnight with him. Like you go and get some rest. And that was the plan. I hadn't eaten that day, right? Because I'm like, you know, emergency travel.
Yeah.
My sister was going to drive me to McDonald's to just get something and come back to the hospital. When we were at the McDonald's drive-through, I get a call from my mom saying they called a Code Blue. They had rushed in trying to resuscitate him and nothing worked. And the decision about what to do they continue to try to revive him or not, fell to my mom. My mom didn't know what to do, so she looked at me. I had to make the decision to let him go.
How did you make that decision? And the reason why I asked is because, like, so obviously I'm in hospice, and it's always interesting to hear, like, because you're someone that close to you.
Yeah. I knew my dad would not ever want to live sick. My dad was never afraid of death. My dad always talked about, you know, when his time was up, his time was up. He was not somebody that wanted to prolong life beyond what, you know, the length of time that was allocated to him. And so I knew that there were, you know, the chances of them reviving him were slim. And he had said himself that morning that he was ready to go. And I don't know, to this day, I still don't know what was the like true underlying cause of death. Like I know the immediate, you know, what happened, but I don't know ultimately what was going on. But the interesting thing is like, okay, so I'm out of town. Like I flew there, like I hadn't planned this, right? So I'm out of town and suddenly we have to plan a funeral. My mom, so in the house that I grew up in, my mom, my dad, and my nephew lived there. My dad was the only source of income for my entire life. My mom had never worked. So now all of a sudden, I have to figure out how to move my mom to a different place and take care of her, right? Because this is a big house. She's not in a position to keep it up and take care of it and live there by herself. So I have to, figure that out. I have to plan a funeral, have to do all these things unexpectedly that I wasn't planning to do, but also running a business. And so I'm there for that week, plan the funeral again. And I've talked in other episodes about, at the time, running a business, invoice to invoice, living paycheck to paycheck. I'm also like trying to figure out how to manage these expenses. And so that happens. And we had the funeral on a Tuesday. I get back home. I fly back home that night. And I wake up Wednesday morning and my mom calls me and she tells me my nephew who would live with them died. Like the day after the funeral, she found him dead that morning. So I have to fly back to Chicago, get my family, take my kids out of school, and do all of that again a week later. And I just remember what I felt at that time was I felt so alone. And it wasn't alone in grief because I have eight, I grew up with 8 sisters, right? They were feeling it just as much as I was feeling it. My mom was feeling it. My wife and my family, they were a great support system. But what I felt alone in is what you talked about, which is the show of entrepreneurship does not stop, and it falls on you.
Everything.
I remember, similar to what you said, I was at my nephew's funeral, and I had to leave in the middle of the funeral to go take a business call. I had to go sit in the car in the middle of the funeral
and remain composed
and take this call and then go back in. And I remember feeling so alone because I just wanted somebody to acknowledge, like, hey, this is a lot. Right? And I just felt like the fact that it's not like I expected the world to stop or, anybody to throw me a pity party. But it's like, I was just like, does anybody know what I'm dealing with? Like, does anybody know the ridiculousness? Like, I wouldn't even tell people like, yo, my dad just passed, came back from his funeral, and then my nephew died the next day because I thought they would think that I was full of shit. Like, there's no way. Like, there's no way you could tell somebody you're working with, like, yeah, that thing that I'm supposed to have done, I don't have it done because of this. Because it sounds so unbelievable.
And that's so interesting because, like, those stories are so aligned. Like, I remember we used a legacy funeral home out in Jonesboro in Georgia for my dad and for my cousin. And so my dad is in the large chapel, right? And so his thing was that day, and they roll him out of the chapel and like roll my cousin in. And to this day, like, I wish I had walked out. Cause like, it's sometimes at night, like I see that. Like, and it's not even a video. It's like a still picture of like rolling out and rolling in. And they weren't even at the same time. So I don't even know why my mind does this. But it's literally like I can see it so clear. And I wish I had like almost walked out of that moment. But it's like for us to have such similar occurrences, it's crazy.
And you mentioned before about how the work, you wouldn't recommend it, but in some ways it's kind of like a coping mechanism.
It is definitely a coping mechanism.
Talk to me about that. Like, is it a conscious coping mechanism to you? Is it all you know? Do you feel like you've been able to properly grieve what has happened?
No, people grieve different ways. And so grieving for me is making sure that I fulfill those promises that I told my people that I would do. So for me, it's like, I told you I'd be this, right? I owe that to them to be this. So it doesn't matter what happens. They pass, this happens, I lose this, I lose that. It doesn't matter. Like, my promise was I will continue the legacy. And so that's kind of how I feel like that's what I have to do. Like, that's my giving back to them, right? And also, it's something I genuinely enjoy. Some people like to travel. Some people like to play video games. Some people like to go on dates. Like, I enjoy being in the office. I enjoy having those phone calls. I enjoy those moments. So it brings me happiness at the same time. Whether good or bad, no matter what's going on in the system, it's really about, I am a true proponent of, I am not based on or not built on trying to reach this end goal. Like, I don't know what my end goal is. All I know is that I genuinely enjoy this journey. Like, I enjoy having these tasks and these goals and figuring them out and just riding that along and then adding more to my plate every time. So that's how I am coping with, because even now I'm still coping, right?
So you used the word coping, right? And I think there's a difference between coping and grieving and processing. Right. So you're sort of managing what happened, but you're not necessarily healing it.
Absolutely not. No, I don't know. Do you ever really heal from the death of your parents? Right. Like, you just learn how to live with that. Right.
Have you had dreams about your mom since she's passed?
No, but other people have and have called me. And so it's funny that she mentioned that because I literally sit and I asked him so many probing questions because I'm trying to put together, like, is she trying to tell me something? I just believe in that type of stuff. So I'm like, what is she trying to tell me? And finally, someone called me with something that was unrelated. And I said, oh, that's what that is.
It made sense.
I put it all together at that point.
Wow.
So it's like, she's still helping me even though she's not here.
And does that help? Does that help with you mentioned like you don't ever actually truly get over it, right? But does that help with the coping, or at least the acceptance and the ability to move forward? Like,
it makes me believe that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Because her response to a question that I had, I was asking God, but the response came from 3 different people from their dreams as she appeared in their dreams. And in the end, I put as much of that as I could together.
Right.
And then I get a call for something to happen. I said, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. Otherwise, I would not have gotten that call.
Did you feel at all like while you were going through this, did you feel any resentment? I know you like working and I know you like business, it fuels you. But like, did you feel any sort of resentment at God, at the universe, at people? Because you're dealing with 3 deaths. You're dealing with the birth of your son, which is a beautiful thing, but it also is like, it is childbirth is risky, right? And it's not, the end product is joyous, but the journey there is often stressful. Yeah. Did you feel any resentment about the burden and the weight that you had to bear?
No. And the reason why, and it might just be for me, is like, it's kind of stuff that you ask for. Like, you can't say like, I want to be this, and this is what comes with this, right? So that's the package. And so when you ask for things, or you tell the universe or whatever you believe in, what you want, like, you're not just getting that one part of it. You're getting the whole package. So sometimes I look back and I say, okay, I understand. Or my relationship with this person might have faded, or this might have happened, or that might have happened, or, even girlfriends, not working out. It's like, it's because that wasn't a part of the package that I asked for. And so I might have been sad about it, right? I felt down about it, but no resentment. I just keep moving. But again, I don't think it's healthy. Right. Like, I want to make sure like people understand like that shit is not good. Like, you need to take time. You need to focus. You need to get someone to talk to. You need to properly grieve. Like, these things are very important. We say it takes 13 months to really get past the death where you can truly function at your optimal level again. So it's definitely not healthy. I do definitely think I'm a nut. Right. And I'm okay with that. But I don't suggest everyone do that.
That's deep. And I appreciate you sharing that perspective, especially because it is fresh. And
it's fresh.
A lot of what you said now about how you are coping and processing, tomorrow the answer could be completely different. It's such a fluid and dynamic situation. Tonight, right? Yeah.
I can leave here and have a breakdown in the car.
Yeah.
That's because that's how it happens, right? Like, you don't really know when these things are coming about. Like, I know I've been out sometimes. I'm like, oh, let me run to the car right quick. Not so I can just like cry, like just insane, like have this flow of tears, but so I can like bring myself back to myself.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can go back and finish what my task is at hand.
Man.
But again,
that's real.
Not healthy. So I don't suggest anybody do it. But if you must.
It's almost like the takeaway here is that as an entrepreneur, it's always you're in survival mode. And tragedy, grief, happy times, sad times, is like you always, your instinct is always just survival.
Nothing can stop you.
Yeah.
And you gotta want it that bad. Right? Like, you've gotta want it. Like, you've got to be willing to do more than what someone else would be willing to do. Because if it's just your job, you might take those 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
I can't. If I take 2 weeks off, who's going to do that job?
Yeah. That's often how I feel when, people who are well-intentioned, and their advice is always like, hey, you need a vacation, or you need to take time off, or, you need, it's like that's cute. That sounds cute.
It sounds good.
But the reality is I am the monkey that stops the show.
Yeah.
If I take time off, this shit falls apart.
Yeah.
And it's not just like an abstract thing. It's people are not going to get paid. Customers are not going to get what they have been promised. The business will fall apart. And that isn't like an ego thing. Like, I don't want to be that important, but it is a reality of when you run a small business, when you are a business owner, when you run a startup, you wear so many hats and you don't have the time to cleanly take stuff off your plate all the time. And so you end up in situations where there is tragedy or there are things that happen and you have to keep going.
Moral of the story, you got to have thick skin. You got to want it better than you want anything else. The guy that says, I want it better than I wanted to breathe, right? Like, that's real. Yeah. Like, that is insanely accurate. Yeah. So just keeping all that in mind, and before you step out to this world, make sure that you're built for this, because you're going to find out quickly. Yeah. You're going to, if you think you can survive like this, you'll know. Like, you'll know within a year. if like this is like meant for you. And I'm not saying some people can keep going or not keep going, but you'll know pretty quickly. So,
well, thank you for sharing your story, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
Thank y'all for rocking with us and spending the time. And as always, we'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.